Okay, first of all, a very warm welcome to all of you for this roundtable discussion. Let me introduce myself. My name is Anvesha Shaha, and currently I work as the Integrated Delivery Manager at Techno Exponent. So, Techno Exponent as a company is we have 400 plus engineers in house, and we are focusing a lot on building custom AI solutions. And it is my pleasure that I will be acting as the moderator for the day for this session. So today we are here to discuss the ever evolving world of AI in healthcare. The topic for the day is transforming patient care, integration of AI in healthcare diagnostics and treatment. And we are honored that we have such a fantastic panel of experts with us today. And before I begin with the panel introductions and proceed further, I would like to thank each one of you for joining this session and really excited to learn more from you and share insights with each other. Thank you so much once again. So I would like to introduce the panel one by one, and I would like to apologize in prior that if I mispronounce anybody's name or miss out anybody's name. So just wanted to introduce the whole panel. So we have Captain Ko, he's the chairman from Vero AI. Then we have Crispin Atkins, he's the partner and senior advisor at DataEvolve.ai. Then we have Morgan Templer, CEO at First CDO Partners. Then we have Montu Samadar, he's the head of healthcare data and AI, Gen AI and Google Cloud offering leader at Versucha. Then we have Sui Tripathi. She is a PhD in healthcare and statistics, currently partner and GTM Alliance leader at IBM. Then we have Mark Mangus. He's the healthcare strategist at Red Hat. Then we have Dr. Vishwan Senapati. He is the PhD holder in computer science, and currently he is the senior lead consultant and solution architect at ITC Infotech. Then we have Oitri Dotso, he's the principal at Precision Healthcare Advisors LLC. Then we have Raghav Sehgal, he's the co-founder and head of sales at A21.ai. Just a second, let me admit some more people as well. Okay, so I'll just continue the introductions. So I've introduced Raghav Sehgal. He's the co-founder and head of sales at A21.ai. And then we have John Keithley, founder and CEO at Solved Healthcare LLC. And then we have Kumar Prasun. He's the Group Chief Information Officer at TWYN. And then we have Manoj Bhatia. He's the Vice President of Strategic Alliance at Behavioral Signals. And I think then we have Karen Chuck, founder and president, Karen Chuck Consulting Incorporation. Then we have Neha Tiwari, co-founder, COO consultant at Unify.ai. Then we have Brett Weston, founder and head of data strategy, Elevio Consulting. And then we have Johannes Farkas, CEO and owner at innovative-technologies.ai. Also, we have Manush S, and he recently has informed us that he has co-founded a company and is currently a CEO at Genex Inc. So congratulations on that. Then we also have Alice Stain, the startup advisor Accelerate from Wentworth Institute of Technology. Then we have Gaetano Bonificio, PhD in Biology General, currently strategy consultant at freelance.com. Then we have Dr. Harshvardhan Bal. He's a PhD in molecular biology, currently president Biopharma, CDMO, licensing and partnering at Shilpa Pharma Inc. Then we have Julia Commissary, CEO and co-founder at Glendor Inc. Then we have Mark Ali, CEO Tionovix LLC. We also have Dr. Rohit T. He's the PhD holder in electronics and communication engineering, and he's the CTO at DebtAction.ai. Then we have David Shipley, healthcare. He's the healthcare AI research lead at Independent Consultant. Last but not the least, we have David H. Berger. He's the CEO at Sunny Downstate Medical Center. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Sorry for this quick discussion, quick introduction. We have a large panel today. And I personally am very excited to learn from all of you with your divided experiences, with your varied experiences and insights on this subject matter. And I would like to ask if I have missed anybody's name, then please feel free to introduce yourself. All right. So I hope I've covered everyone. So thank you so much. And just to, since this is a large panel, I just wanted to have a constructive communication throughout the session. So in terms of the conversation flow, if I talk about, it will be concisely me just giving a brief about the topic. And then what I would do is I always believe in active participation. So I would invite each speaker to speak something about a curiosity question, as I call it, to be answered by you guys and learn something from you. And then that's how we will move on. There might be some questions because this is a live session. So there might be some questions from the audience also that we can take at the end at a fun Q&A session where it will be open to all kind of a question. And last but not the least, definitely I will try to summarize the key takeaways from this session and also will also know all the final thoughts from all of you. So without further ado, let's start the session. So let me ask the first question. So I would like to ask the first question to Captain Poe if he is present. That is, how has AI integration in healthcare evolved over the past year? I mean, I have been watching the trends in the healthcare space, and I believe that from the last year, things are changing a lot in this landscape. So just wanted to know your thoughts if you're present in the session. All right. So if not, then I would pass on the question to David Shipley, and I would request you to share your thoughts on how has AI integration in healthcare evolved over the past year. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'll tell you, enterprise vendors like Epic have already been introducing like crazy good stuff around generative AI. And the good thing about someone like Epic doing this is it's kind of already vetted. It kind of already passes the muster of governance. And it's already been tried and true because they have just such a great stockpile of academic medical centers, like Johns Hopkins and Geisinger and others. So that's a huge win. And I just think that in the next year and a half, we as an industry, we as a healthcare industry should be expecting the things that they're doing, like pretty much all documentation that docs and nurses do to be automated by the end of 2025. I just think that's what generative AI is really good at, and that's what they can do, and it's going to be amazing. Unfortunately, I got to say that the competitors, Meditech, Cerner, Athena, but I'll be interested to hear what others have to say about this. I'm not seeing that from others. So I'm kind of got my eye on Epic, but we'll see. I just think it's all very doable. It's going to be in the next year and a half, and we're just going to and doctors could take 4-6 hours out of their weekly time typing. And that's a huge win. Not a hard dollar ROI. Like I can go to a CFO and say, here's the money you're gonna get back from this. But I'll tell you, man, if we can cut down on the pajama time for docs, and we can stop the attrition of nurses, which we should be able to do, I think that's where it's at.
Yes, and I totally agree. Even I was reading some articles that what is the patient to healthcare professional ratio, and I think AI can contribute significantly on increasing the efficacy of that. And thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights on my curiosity question. So thank you so much for your insights. And if I continue that question, I would like to know also what is your take on how is AI currently transforming patient care in hospitals and clinics? And for this, I would like to invite the next speaker. That would be Montu Shamadar. So if he can enlighten us with what is his take on how is AI currently transforming patient care in hospitals and clinics?
That's a great topic. I think, and great context continuation to what David has mentioned. In fact, recently, I have implemented Doc Assist AI. That's a clinical note summarization AI. So I think, the context came that doctors are spending a lot of time in documenting, their clinical
Hmm.
note from a patient visit. But this Doc Assist AI can summarize, can capture all the conversation from a clinical workflow as soon as the, appointment starts. And by that time, like 15, 20 minutes, doctors spend time, he will have his all the notes, capture, mature and summarize. And, it can integrate to the Epic system, and also it will give the summarized note to the doctor so that, the overall process, doctor can focus on quality of care instead of, focusing on the documentation and all of those. But as such, if you look at the healthcare industry, where it is going, I
Hmm.
think we have, three major driver. There are a lot of, clinical data that's being generated, and there is a lot of appetite to digitize those information and extract the insight. So I think AI can play really vital role in this whole story of what is going on currently from a clinical interoperability perspective. And also, major concern in the healthcare industry is population aging. So the Medicaid and Medicare population is increasing. So we need a at-home care capability with all AI enable connected device to connect the data from the patient. So I think there are a lot of things are happening where, this AI and Gen AI is going to accelerate, expedite, increase the productivity, efficiency of all the operation and processes. That is, the direction it is going. And I want to add one more context. Till last year, we have seen all the AI was in a laboratory or research grade AI. From
Hmm.
there, now we are moving to a human assist AI. And,
Hmm.
from there, we'll be moving to autonomous AI. So I think, and current trend in the industry, all the healthcare and pharmaceutical and all the major, provider industries are now allocating budget like 15 to 20 million, at least for their part of their roadmap to talk about AI and, all of those Gen AI and how it can improve the efficiency, productivity, and all of those. So there is a great development happening, and now we are at a stage where people started implementing, seeing the output, and it is really impacting the overall industry, which is very exciting. And I will end with the last point that, generative AI is a age where everything is changing. You get up in the morning, you see things are changing. So we also need to understand that it will take some time to stabilize the overall, what is going on. So the ocean wave is up, but it is going to take some time to settle down. But there are a lot of things are happening around which are exciting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for answering the question so beautifully. And even my father always tells me this joke that nowadays doctors have become a inventory manager rather than a healthcare provider. So I think it's their job to help provide healthcare services instead of taking care of the records and documentation. I think definitely that insight is really helpful for me as well to know about it. Thank you so much, sir, for your detailed answer and such a good insight. And moving on with this, I also would like to jump into something called personalized medicine. And I have a quick question in that is what are the latest advancements you feel that AI has done in the field of personalized medicine? And for that, I would like to invite Alice Stein to say a few words about what is her take on this particular uh, topic. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are
First of
you?
all, personalized medicine, it's also commonly called to precision medicine. It's a
Hmm.
really interesting and really cutting edge type of artificial intelligence that uses machine learning, specifically natural language processing, in order to take into consideration and really label a lot of these myriad of scientific journals that we see, a lot of these scans that we're seeing,
Mhm.
as well as taking into account really interesting molecular data around genetic molecules. We're talking about specific proteins, amino acids, all of that's being codified using machine learning. And what's wonderful about that as it relates to precision medicine, we're able to, using machine learning, get very specific on treatments for patients. I almost said clients, patients, because of our context being healthcare, who may have very rare diseases or have rare types of cancers, for example, and perhaps they may be eligible for clinical trials that they may be available in other parts of the world, for example, that they may not be privy to. But again, using things like artificial intelligence to crunch so much data, using these very expansive large language models in order to find cures for things that we never even imagined. So when it comes to this world of personalized medicine or precision medicine,
Hmm.
we're really just starting to figure out how to implement it on a larger scale, because what's happening is there's different healthcare systems across the country, across the world, that are all taking these language models, and what they're doing it is they're customizing it to their specific use case, right? And there's companies like, for example, Tempus is a wonderful company to look at, Sophia Genetics, right? They're doing a lot of really revolutionary things. And what they're doing is they're creating new ways of qualifying possible new treatments for patients and overall improving patient outcomes. Because imagine being in a rural town somewhere in the US and not having access to treatment possibilities. But if you have a physician who has partnered with Tempus, for example,
Hmm.
they can help identify much more readily that the specific patient has a rare type of disease or cancer, because the AI, the model that was built, is able to digest so much information. And from there, gives access to new findings that have never been seen before, or they would have been seen, but it would take years and years and years of research in order to get there. So it really expedites the research process and also creates these hidden gems of information. One thing that I want to point out that's going to be really critical for the future when it comes to precision medicine is this idea of having a human in the loop. It's going to be mission critical to have a
Hmm.
human in the loop as it relates to figuring out and making sure that the treatment or diagnosis is actually accurate, because like any good statistics experiment, right, there's a confidence variable involved. So it's very important that we may have built the best model in the world to crunch a lot of data, but the real differential is going to be the AI model working intimately with the physician and healthcare team to really figure out what that diagnosis and what that treatment plan looks like to improve patient outcomes. So I'm very excited about this field. I think it's phenomenal. I advise a company called Lifeguard Health, and they don't work in precision medicine specifically, but they're
Hmm.
catering to the issue at hand that we have in the US, which is the population that's age 50 to 80 right now wants to age in place. They don't want to have to go to senior housing or a different type of care facility. They want to age in place. So
Hmm.
we're leveraging AI from a different standpoint. We're using motion sensor technology in the home to help them age in place. I want to kind of add to the question that you asked before about what's happening in the hospital system. I think we need to also look at what's going on in the home system, because smart homes
Yeah,
are evolving and they're
right.
enabling people to age in place, which is going to be something to look forward to now and into the future. So thank you. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Alice, for sharing such a wonderful insight. And Oitri would like to add as well. So we would love to hear something from you as well on this topic.
Thank you, Anbasha. Great points by Alice. I completely agree that the democratization of personalized medicine is a huge win. And this has been ongoing for some time, actually. And I've been privileged to be a part of teams that have been developing tools that have delivered this. I want to distinguish two things. I want to mention, and this was mentioned, I think, by Mantu earlier, which was that there is a difference between generative AI and AI tools that have been for use for a while, such as NLP. So in curation of large volumes of literature, NLP is very helpful. And we've always made sure to pay attention to the quality of the generated reports and the generated summaries, because we want to make sure that whatever is being used for treatment of patients is of very, very high quality. But the other part that to me is very interesting is the notion of how generative AI could be potentially used to try and make some discoveries about underlying biology. So there are ways in which we can now really surveil the data and put together patterns that are really difficult for a human being to do, but much easier for a computer or an LLM to do. And so, for instance, you could have large sets. You mentioned Tempest. There are other players as well. There's Foundation Medicine. There's, of course, cancer centers and NCCN designated centers, NCI cancer centers that are doing this, where they've accumulated large cohorts of data where they're able to go into depth and try and figure out some underlying aspects of biology that have previously gone unnoticed. And these could be aspects like expression pathways in genomics, but they could also be accumulating genomic data and combining it with imaging and clinical data. So to me, that's really interesting experimental work that's ahead. But at all times, as Alice mentioned, what we have to be very, very careful of are all the guardrails that need to be in place for healthcare, which is that the data quality has to be there, data privacy is paramount, and we have to also make sure that the models are built in ways where they actually address a diverse source of data, so that it's not just tuned to one specific geography or one specific economic class or one specific gender. It really needs to be very inclusive in order to drive true understanding. And then the last piece is that the human in the loop is going to continue to be so essential, because in order for AI to be effective in healthcare, we have to always keep an eye on how we can continue to build trust, and we can continue to ensure that the findings are those that people can rely upon for their own diagnosis and treatment.
All right. Oyत्री, thank you so much for adding to what Alice said wonderfully already. And just to share with Alice, Gaetano says that he is glad to hear that you mentioned Sophia Genetics. He has worked with them for 7+ years, so he's very happy about it. And also, Mark also did mention something that age in place like many other countries, like blue zone. So he just appreciated what you said. So thank you so much for both of your inputs. But Oyत्री sir, I won't leave you. I also have a question specific for you. So I have a question that what is your opinion that how can AI help manage this growing volume of healthcare data? What is the best way that we can manage this growing volume?
So I think if I understand your question correctly, there's a couple of ways to look at it. On one hand, it's an opportunity, right? So on one hand, it's an opportunity to really be able to do a better job of understanding a person's specific condition and the biology of what's happening with them. We can hopefully and potentially and we have been hamstrung so far by the data silos that have existed. So far, for instance, I've worked in companies like Philips where we've had radiology data, and then we've had clinical data. And while it gets used at certain points, it's not really looked upon together. So on one hand, there's this ability to combine data sets in a practical and in a sense that makes that is scientifically accurate, in order to be able to draw inferences that help us understand what's going on with a patient better. It may also enable us, and that would enable us to do things like better modeling, better risk prediction, and better even prediction on how they might respond to drugs. So one of the initiatives that I've been involved in is being able to collect data on cancer patients so that we can do a better job of understanding not only what treatments are appropriate for them, but what treatments they are likely to respond better to. And so I think these are aspects that are very exciting that there's this whole discovery aspect. And then there's a whole drug discovery space as well, where you can look at how to combine these landscapes of data for patients in order to understand better how to find better markers, biomarkers that would enable us to treat patients more effectively and discover drugs. And then finally, the other aspect that I think would be very helpful is really in reducing some of the overhead that goes into the current ways. There was a conversation a little bit earlier about how to handle physician notes, for instance. There are going to be other examples of that. But all of this, I think, has to come with the caveat of it has to make scientific sense. We have to have a lot of care about how the data is used for training and ensure that we avoid common problems like hallucinations in using these models, and therefore with a lot of good human and scientific supervision.
Understood. So I think Mark has raised his hand. So Mark, please go ahead with your query. Yeah.
Yeah, just to build on that, agree with everything that was said. I run into customers almost every day that are trying to make sense out of their AI strategy in healthcare. I work with payers and providers mostly, and they're still not in a place where they have standardized data models. And moving data from one place to another is still a problem. And so we're going down that value chain way, the algorithms are way up here. That's what everybody seems to be focused on, is let's have the new innovative, shiny thing to move the ball forward. And we need to do that. Don't get me wrong. But below the line, we have all this sea of unstructured data that nobody really knows how to do anything with.
Right.
And what we're finding is some really innovative use cases around just getting the data from one place to another. I'll give you an example. In the case of a large payer I was just talking to yesterday, they told me that 35% of the data that's given to them by providers using standard interfaces like FHIR is rejected because the structure is wrong, right? So obviously these sophisticated rule-based systems and APIs are failing. And this is an area where AI could be used, probably in conjunction with something like a graph database and sophisticated tagging to learn what's failing and correct it automatically, right? So once we start doing this stuff kind of below the covers and making our 30 and 40-year-old data systems that were set up for analytics and not for AI a little bit smarter, it's going to enable a whole bunch of things above the line in life sciences and other places, because now that data will be available.
Yes. And just to continue that, I think Lynn has raised her hand as well, and she would like to add something. So hi, Lynn. Please go ahead with. Hi. So please go ahead with what you want to add to this topic.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to find out a little bit more about, obviously, with global concerns, all the regulations in each country are totally different in regard to open source information. So someone like in Germany, one of my friends is doing a nonprofit called Hippo, and that's very open source and very innovative. Versus in the U.S., we have multiple regulations and HIPAA regulations and things like that. So how do you feel as though kind of the blend is going to happen so that AI can, I guess, innovate properly without having, I guess, all the biases that are already connected to that?
I can take that, Anvisha. So great point, Lynn. And this is something that we struggled with, where I worked with data teams that tried to essentially work with data sources across the globe. And so what we found was that there were certain there are certain restrictions that do not allow the export of patient data. And I think we can all think of countries and entire regions that do that. And so what we've had to do is come up with innovative approaches where we work locally with the data, where we end up taking a federated approach and we export the inferences, if not the actual raw data. And so at the end of the day, it is difficult to be able to create, for instance, large cross-global data sources or cross-global even initiatives. And it's understood that a lot of times you have to do what you can in compliance with the local data regulations, whether it's GDPR and others, while trying to build a federated source of learning.
So, Oitri, thank you so much for taking Lynn's perspective as well. Okay, Raghav has also raised his hand. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. I'm assuming that since all of the conversation is with respect to AI and around model training and using data for model training, I think there's a strong case we made, and actually we're working in this domain around generating synthetic data to support training. So you don't need 100% accuracy of data. Where 1:1 solutions are required, yes, you need 100% accuracy. But as far as model training is required, you can get a sample of the data, even 10%, 20%, and then you can generate synthetic data for model training. So that's how you can actually create a model. Let's say, for example, if you need a fall detection model, you can have a subset that can easily be trained, and then for that particular cohort of that particular persona, you can accurately predict or forecast any such adverse events.
I see. So I think in this case, we had a pretty much a lot of discussion on what I started off with, that how AI can help the growing volume of healthcare data. And of course, it comes with a set of implications of its own. Thank you so much for everyone who has added to this particular topic and shown such a huge amount of active participation for providing me the insights. And of course, I won't let anybody go without speaking. So I would like to invite Brett Weston. And my question to you is that what you feel, what are the most significant recent breakthroughs if I talk about AI diagnostics?
If you talk, sorry, what was the last part of the question there?
Yeah, sure. I'll repeat myself. So what is your take on what are the most significant recent breakthroughs in AI diagnostics? What do you feel about it?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for having me, Brett Weston. A lot of the work that I've been doing with organizations through the data strategy company, the use cases that we've seen so far have really been the low-hanging fruit, using AI to create more informed, better informed healthcare stakeholders, whether that's educational material for patients, helping members understand the care they're receiving, helping life sciences sales teams kind of have a wingman educating their sales teams, things that open source models, open source data. That's been the easy stuff. Now it's we start to look at using AI to kind of streamline the delivery of healthcare operations, where we're actually talking, patient data. I heard the use case earlier, capturing doctor notes. There's also reviewing EHR data, kind of narrowing down where maybe medical teams focus, getting more efficient there. But very quickly, you take it a step further into prior auths. We've seen, legal action there. We've seen CMS get involved to say, okay, that's a step too far. SDOH is another one where potentially can predict a gap, but you've got patient population underrepresented areas that are underrepresented, which can impact the accuracy of the model. So working with organizations to try and figure out, one, is their data ready for AI? Do they have the governance in place, not just around the data, but the use cases that they're selecting for AI to make sure that from a privacy perspective, from a legal perspective, they're not getting themselves in trouble. If it's a use case that's going to require kind of a being productionized, that human in the loop is going to be key. Anything that's informing care, guiding the care that a patient gets, it won't be long until someone is, a doctor gets guidance from an AI model that says this patient maybe should get X. That patient, the doctor follows the recommendation, something happens adverse to the patient, and now there's lawsuits there. So, organizations still just kind of stepping through and getting ready for what is probably the true potential for AI.
Yes, you absolutely said right. I mean, of course, there is a potential in AI, but we really need to regulate it very well, as well as responsibly use it to make our humankind better in terms of healthcare is concerned. But definitely, that needs a lot of regulations and lot of perspectives to it. How we plan to regulate and do it ethically. That's for sure.
It's been seen as a I think there's two camps and they're very two ends of the spectrum. One saying AI is going to be the end of the world. We need to have controls on it. The computers are going to take over. The other end says we can't put all these controls in place. We're restricting it. AI is good. It's going to make things better. And I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I've been working with an organization, AI 2030, that the goal is to put a framework around it. It's not to say it's bad or it's good, but here's the right way to do it, and to do it in a way to which it doesn't create harm. It doesn't have a negative impact. It does what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely. So I think Mantu Samadar has raised his hand and he would like to add as well. Sir, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so Brett, I think you touched a very good point. So the earlier thing that I was talking about, doc assist AI, that is reducing the greatest burden of the doctor. We have also implemented medical record digitization and insight extraction AI, which was integrated with the doc assist AI, so that when doctor is looking into the patient, chart and conversation happening before finalizing the diagnosis for improving accuracy, it gives doctor a prompt based on the area that doctor is discussing and touching, whether doctor has checked his previous medical record or recent, some intervention that happened from a EHR system. So that help, improving the accuracy. But again, you're absolutely right. We have to bring that accuracy and measure and guardrail and some of the trust that we can have. But that is also evolving. It is going to take some time. I just want to add that point.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, that there is yet to come how we will actually regulate and use it in the responsible manner. As the time will go, definitely that regulation, more reforms to ethically use it will come in the market for sure. So thank you so much for adding value to the point as well. So, and thank you, Brett, for sharing your insights. So, I would like to invite my next speaker. That would be Gaetano Bonifacio. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Hi, yes, I hear you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Hello, everyone.
So I have an interesting question for you, and it is based on, at the end of the day, when we are using something, we definitely expect some outcomes, right? So, what is your take on what role does AI play in improving this patient outcomes? If you can enlighten us.
Yes, well, they already mentioned it about precision medicine, personalized medicine, actually even preventive medicine. It's fantastic because when I worked at Microsoft, actually I experienced real cases in hospitals where, for example, doctors in Ireland were able to predict the preeclampsia. Preeclampsia, so basically women know it very well. So they were able to predict potential preeclampsia based on the information they had. So they already had the information, they already had the data. But then, thanks to the AI, doctors were better informed on the decision to go for a surveillance on a patient, on a woman who was pregnant. This is just one of the examples. Then Alice mentioned the tempus of genetics. I've been working for years in genomics and multiomics. Now, why there is a lot of multiomics now? Because at the end, let's say if I get a cancer, I have more chances to be better treated thanks to this constellation of data. Genomics now, is booming since years, but it's not the answer. If you want to treat a certain condition, you need a set of different data sources. Could be genomics, proteomics, radiomics, it doesn't matter. The interesting thing, and there are studies about that, The interesting thing is that alone, those Lego bricks give you, let's say, a percentage, a partial answer. But then taken together, those information and then combined with the AI actually helps physician to predict the best treatment for a given individual, for a given patient. And this is really the outcome that I envisage for everyone in the world at the end.
So anybody would like to add anything on this? Just wanted to know another perspective as well. Anybody can raise their hand. Yes, Raghav, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, with respect to improving outcomes significantly, there's still some way to go. My concern here is that generative AI is going to be, or because of generative AI, the AI-based diagnostic systems would be at par with average doctor. So, and an average doctor may get lazy and say, okay, fine, I'll follow what AI says and I'll treat the patient accordingly without being the checker, right? So the
Right.
doctor needs to be the checker, and that's the decision is the most critical part of it in the assist systems, right? So from that perspective, we may see a situation in 2030 that doctors need to pass similar to a Turing test that, whether they are better than AI or not, and take the decision themselves. And therefore, the other perspective is that in some cases it may harm, it may be, it may do benefit, but as a rather than taking as a treatment tool, as a triaging tool, it would be extremely beneficial. Because it can help triage patients in the hospital from various level of emergency care that might be required. So as a triaging, it can be a wonderful tool. But as a decisioning, I think we are far, far away from that.
Okay. So I see a lot of hands actually. Thank you so much for that. So I would start with Lynn. I think she raised her hand first. So Lynn, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, I know that with AI, there's a lot of bias, and obviously it depends upon obviously good data in versus the data out. My concern, especially in the areas of female healthcare, and I just want to see what your experience has been with the bias and how they plan on handling that a little bit better for the future.
I can respond probably if it is okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think Lynn, a very good question. I think, the trust and ethical aspect is coming. For that, there are some additional capabilities are coming, like, explainable AI, and also some of the other things like LLM judge and also LLM evals. So what happened, obviously, we need multidisciplinary data point, a diverse data point to take care of the bias. But again, some part of the synthetic data can bring the variation, but however, we need to have at least enough variation from all the perspective to cover the bias. But then again, I think Raghav was mentioning, how do you trust the decision, the outcome the doctor is making? So that is where I think all the AI solutions now they are coming out with explainable AI. So when the decision is being made, there is a knowledge graph that shows them what data points are being used to make the decision to bring the transparency. And not only that, this LLM evals and LLM by judge, some of the things that being developed or evaluation is coming now, it also shows that if LLM is making certain decision based on certain algorithm, then what are the data they are using? Even the data that they retrieve, the RAG model, retrieval augmented generation, whatever data they are using in the decision making, whatever they retrieve and whatever data point is being used, are they relevant? So I think some of the things are coming, on the way, but I think this is not mature yet. but I think we have to wait and see how it get mature. But bringing those transparency, because LLMs or machine learning algorithm are black box, and bringing those transparency, knowledge graph, explainable AI, giving some of the additional capability and enabling them to see how the decision is being made, that is being crucial, to resolve all these bias, to bring the trust on the AI. So I just wanted to add that.
And getting more women into AI.
Yeah,
that's important.
Yep.
That is important. I can tell you, I mean, today's participation feels great. I mean, a lot of women have joined, and thank you so much to all of you for joining this session, actively participating and asking the right questions and giving me all the knowledge. So thank you so much. And I think continuing this point, there are a lot of hands which are raised. So I would request.
I'd like to sort of respond to Mantu.
Yeah, sure.
So just a sort of change in what you just said, Mantu. My point was not particularly towards whether the AI is taking decision right or not. My point is more towards whether doctors should be able to follow and make sense of what AI is saying, and AI is prescribing them to do. So the decision should be with doctors rather than the AI need to explain. I mean, explainable AI is coming, and it's usually built, but it will be built in a lot different manner. Not the way a lot of people are actually saying, because currently explainable AI is still under research. Lot of facts are thrown around it, but that's not entirely true. Secondly, RAG is a pretty standard model of deployment right now. It doesn't cause an issue. What issue comes out is a hallucination, whether the data that is retrieved is summarized in a proper manner or not. So the RAG itself, the retrieval models are pretty, accurate for the time being. I mean, if you want to get some data point from a database, those are 100% accurate. But summarizations, when AI is asked to summarize something, that may cause hallucination, and the only way to sort of address that is keep on refining it and asking specific questions and specific prompts. So that's how you essentially make the AI system more and more accurate.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to expand on that point and other points that people raised. So a very interesting panel. So one of the things which is very important to address is sort of the elephant in the room, which is bias, hallucination, generalizability of any models that we're using. And one of the big issues with the model training is the amount of data that was used to train the models. So for example, when we're talking about LLMs, right, they were trained on a very large data from internet. When we're talking about medical data, that's not just bits and bytes, it's actually somebody's records. So the data is very sensitive. As a result, it's much harder to find this data and to have access to it in order to train. So there are several models that are highly promising in terms of making it more generalizable and fighting bias. And one of them, for example, is self-supervised learning. But in any case, across all these models, access to the data becomes key, because there's an expression, garbage in, garbage out. It's also the question of volume. You can't train a really good model on 1,000 examples. It's just not enough. So I would think that from the point of view of how we can make AI models and AI approach feasible is to make sure that we do have this data. But at the same time, sort of the other side of this coin is the fact that the data has to be de-identified. It has to be protected. Patient's privacy has to be protected. So it's sort of you have this balance between data needs to be the AI training, AI models and AI developers will need to have access to the data. At the same time, data will need to be de-identified. And then shameless plugin, that's what we're focusing on at Glender. But that's sort of the plugin, but more importantly, I think the conversation of data, how we can get access to the data, especially from multiple countries, especially from across the board, so that we'll have women and men present, different populations, rural versus large hospitals, right? And that's something that, frankly, I'm very passionate about and would love to talk more.
So if I
Uh,
can
Julia, I
follow
think
on to that, I'm sorry. I know
go
there are
ahead.
so many of us who want to say something because it's such an interesting conversation. But I think going back to kind of the idea of synthetic data, so Lynn, I think one of the things that has really been a problem is that collection of data historically has not been accurate or appropriate for women. And so even when you're looking at the data set, it's not so much the bias that you're putting into it yourself, but that there is bias in the data because it was not collected appropriately. That's true for gender diversity and other groups as well, that there just wasn't anything of a Black gay friend who went to the doctor and his doctor winked at him and said, well, you know that none of this data was ever collected for us. And it's true. It is true for women because the bias was in the input. And so there is a case for synthetic data in removing bias by thinking about those reasons that we would exclude or include data. But I also think that those will have a different set of problems, but they definitely comply with HIPAA. So I think there is a good argument for using synthetic data, and I will go on mute now.
I thank you so much for jumping into the conversation. So I think Karen, Manush, and Sui are raising their hands patiently. So Karen, we'll start with you. Please feel free to add your point as well in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a pharmacist by profession. I've had the privilege and pleasure of leading patient-centric award-winning projects at Teaching Hospital. My last 2 roles were vice president at Fortune 10. So I'm coming from the hat of a healthcare professional as well as on behalf of patients. What I hear from all the experts around the panel is that there are great potentials, opportunities for AI in the healthcare space. So I know we're all aware of the biases, the ethics concern, the privacy, accountability, liability, you name it. I think we all know about it. One thing that I highly encourage everyone as AI expert, medical expert consultant is to really push the movement of collective efforts in enhancing or introducing AI literacy. Why? Because right now, everyone knows about what AI is at this level. They have no awareness of how big this could be because they're stalled by all the fear, the barriers, the concern, the risks that are blocking them to think further. I am from Canada. Our Canadian healthcare system is publicly funded. So right now we're at a very challenging situation whereby medical offices are closing, literally closing, because they couldn't keep up with administrative tasks. So without knowing the solutions that's already available at your fingertip, people just close. And what happens? There's a domino effect. So medical clinics close. There are no GP or primary GP for patients. Patients end up going to ER. And guess what? The sickest patients don't get treated as they should at ER because they're grouped by all the other patients who could have been treated or identified early on in the game. So back to the point about patient outcomes, I really think that if we could collectively inform and push this movement about AI literacy, patients can be seen even at their home with wearable AI devices, monitoring vitals and things and lifestyle variables that could really help AI machines to predict, would this be a patient that could be intervened early on in the game? And that way, we're blocking people from, the limited resources what we have. And a lot of time, I don't know about you guys, but when I have my conversation with GP, I only have 5 minutes max. How on earth could you explain your whole medical conditions without a blink, like 5 minutes? And you could tell in their eyes that, hey, come on, time's up. I've got to look at my next patient, right? So people who cannot communicate while they're sick, let alone people who can communicate when they're not able to download the whole gist of things that have happened. So imagine if you've got AI empower chatbot to gather these upfront specs and informations that could help the downstream healthcare professionals to identify, you know what, this one needs to be triaged first, this one needs to be follow up, so that they're not just dealing with patients as is, and they're also focusing on the holistic well-being of individual. And I think that's the missing piece. Right now, there's not enough buy-in in a publicly funded, like Canadian, publicly funded healthcare system whereby healthcare professionals would jump in and say, you know what, I want to learn about AI. Because right now they're just focusing on the patients right in front of them. They got no time for CE. They got no time to figure out what the IT AI could do to them. All they care about is the very pile up of patients that's in front of them. And I can tell you that from firsthand experience. Like when you have a lineup of patients, all you have to do is deal with them and forget about everything else. In Canada, we're still using fax. And the best that we've been doing, e-fax. So from doctor's office to pharmacy. So that's the level of challenge that we're facing. And I'm really hoping that collectively, if we take baby steps, just educate the general public, including patient advocacy group, because they are the one who know, like they know that what are not working. What are the gaps in the healthcare ecosystem? What are some of the things that they could be support better so that they could be the key contributor in the development of AI solutions? What I see is that there are pockets of experts developing what we think is the ideal solutions for a patient, but yet it's got blind spots. So how do we ensure that this doesn't happen? We have to include everybody from AI developers to medical researchers to patient advocacy group to governing bodies so that we are all moving the movement forward in a concerted effort. Because otherwise, we're just doing our own little thing. And then before you know it, if a gap that could have been prevented and addressed earlier on in the game get blown up, then everybody says, you know what? Hands off, no more AI. So I really wanted to share this message, and I have been advocating that AI has huge potential, but we have to do the baby step, not just setting up boundaries on ethics and governance and all that, but the very basic is to have AI literacy. The general public has the right to know. They have to understand the possibility so they can speak up. You know, in the case of rare disease patient, they can be supported so much more if AI could be implemented into the healthcare ecosystem. So I just wanted to mention that because there's so many practicality that needs to be addressed before we can go this high. Like we can go as high as the universe, but we need to deal with the very basic fundamental steps that are stalling us to go way up there. So thank you for letting me to share, because I'm really passionate about the movement of AI literacy. It's not just for specialists, not just for AI developers, it's for every single person who has the right to be treated fairly and sustainably. So I know I haven't had a chance to answer my question, but you can ask me later on. But I just really passionate about that because I've heard enough from patients that they're suffering. They're being asked questions repeatedly from every part of the ecosystem. All of this could be addressed if we work together in a practical way. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for your passionate answer, if I talk about that. And just to interrupt everyone, so I have three hands raised. So Manush has been waiting for so long, and then Sui is there, and then Neha is there. So we'll continue the discussion until this three people, and then we'll move on to somebody new to talk about something exciting, which is very close to my heart. So yeah, Manush, over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So thank you so much for giving me a chance. So I won't take too long. I know we have a lot of things to talk. So let me just quickly give you I'm coming from the CX industry, customer experience. I deal with people who are in call centers who provide customer experience, customer journeys. And so I completely understand this fact that, people are not, like in Canada, what Karen was saying, we don't have enough staff. So I think that problem with the help of an AI bot will be solved, so people are looking at all the workflows, the administrative tasks, or areas where you need a help from an AI engine or an AI bot. Those things are being handled very effectively by people who are providing customer care as a service, which is called CCaaS, right? So the CCaaS companies, who are handling that situation. The good news there is that two big companies, Amazon and Microsoft, have already dominated the cloud industry. And so they have a customer care as a service, cloud-based customer care as a service, initiative being launched. And so for them to launch a bot to do an admin task, to do some paperwork, to transcription, to call summarization is all very simple. And it'll be done very, very quickly in the next few months, few years. So I think solving that problem is easy. That part will be done. The big question that I think where we will struggle is that, we may lose some of that human touch, right? We will obviously be dependent a whole lot on AI. So there is a human touch, which is where some gaps would be seen. And again, shameless plug from my side, my company does behavioral signals. We actually work on human emotions, human engagement, human experience only. So we do take help from AI, but actually we are measuring the emotions of the person who is talking and actually do a better matching of the, say, the patient and the care provider, or customer and the call center agent. So we do a pairing, which is AI mediated conversational intelligence, you can say, like how to figure out that if a person is angry or happy or sad or emotionally stressed out, who would be the better doctor to address that inquiry. Or think of a mental health kind of a setup where you do a better matching of the of the patient and the care provider. So we basically work in that software, and we believe that healthcare has definitely has an application there. But overall, I think that the space is interesting. We should look at both the angles: the AI administrative task angle, look at the AI human touch angle. Don't think of AI coming in to replace a human agent all the time. Think from that angle as to how we provide some value, and then also the patient privacy and sort of the fraud detection or deep fake stuff or hallucinations that are coming on the AI side. Well, obviously there will be some regulation, some work going on in that space, and we can as an industry we will definitely be resolving that as well. But I think the admin piece is a solvable problem, and bots will be able to solve that for sure.
Thank you so much for your insights. And I think some of you did raise the hand to continue the previous discussion, but I would like to drive the conversation in line with what Manoj said. And I would like to hear your thoughts about how is AI AI can be used in diagnosing mental health conditions. And I would request Manoj to start the conversation, and rest of you can join in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
I think there was a confusion between me and Manoj. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry for
So
that.
that's okay. So yeah, so yeah, basically my background, I would like to introduce before I go into the conversation. My background is biomedical research, and I was doing biomedical research for like past 10 years, and I was also into different stages of drug discovery, from early drug discovery to even up to the clinical trial management. So I have seen the whole spectrum of drug discovery, and during this time, this AI have significant impact on different stages. So we were taking up some of the projects in early diagnosis of type 2 diabetics using AI, like AI machine learning tools. And with that, we were using like organ-on-chip systems, so that we would be able to predict early, before the onset of type 2 diabetics, like the progression of the disease from fatty liver to liver fibrosis, and also it manifests the clinical signatures of type 2 diabetics. So we were able to replicate what is happening in the human patients just before those kind of problems occur in the patients before. So using those molecular signatures, we were able to predict that. So those are some of the example situations where we would be able to use AI. Machine learning tools would be much more useful in those situations. Going back to the mental health issues, so that part I'm not directly involved in. I can only make general statements on that. We have seen like a lot of mental health issues in this country, and that has a significant impact on like people like blame mental health issues on like mass shooting and different events. So that is a main problem. How we can address those, how we can utilize AI on those tackling those issues, would be something which we need to like collectively discuss and like decide on how we can tackle those issues. Those are, I mean, if any one of them who are working on mental health section, it's open for discussion. That's good. But from some of the points which I wanted to bring in is like how in healthcare, up to what extent AI is useful, right? We have seen like diagnostics, we can improve a lot of reliability on effectiveness in diagnostics, we can use it. Then how we can use for example, a doctor, he's trained in medicine. He's not trained in handling paperwork. Compare a doctor handling patients in US versus India. I'll tell you, like in India, a patient, around 200 patients are being seen by a doctor in a day. But compare that with a patient, number of patients being seen in US, it's not more than 20. Right? Why is that? Because a doctor assigned 30 minutes of his time with a patient, and during that 30 minutes, he will be handling paperwork for 25 minutes. He will be seeing the doctor, he will be seeing the patient for 5 minutes, looking at the problem. He will be always handling the computer. That's where, like earlier somebody was telling that assist doctor, right? Those kind of things very, very handy. So doctor is trained to be a physician. He should have the like the specialty for handling the patients, not the paperwork. All the documentation should be taken over by AI, should be assisting that. That's a very, very key aspect. So for clinical trial management, I'm going straight into the clinical trial management, where how this can be effective. If you look at the whole spectrum of drug discovery, so from early drug discovery stage to the late phase, if you look at the cost of drugs in US for patients, it's really, really high. Average annual, like per capita cost of a drug in US is more than $1,000 compared to like $300 in US, in Europe or other countries. Like we are spending too much on like drugs in US, right? So when you ask about the cost of that, it is like we blame it on the drug development, the cost of drug development. If you think about the cost for developing a drug, it's more than $2 billion, it's assumed, right? And 70% of that cost comes in the clinical trial management. 70% of the cost. Most of them is like coming on to managing the paperwork, managing the regulatory aspect. So can we take AI and address it in a better way to optimize the drug development process so that we can bring down the cost of healthcare?
So Manush, Mantu, I'm working on a solution called Regulatory Intelligence Solutions on a cloud analytics platform for expediting clinical trial and regulatory approval process. I think what you exactly said, like, it makes sense. We are using Gen AI to respond to regulatory authorities, the automated solution to respond to the, their queries, and also using generative AI to generate a synthetic data to reduce the variation. I think that is saving a lot of time for the, clinical trial and drug, approval. So I just wanted to, share that.
Definitely. Yeah, that is very valuable. Like, I mean, there are a lot of AI tools are coming up, but there are also looking at like how much we can use AI, the barriers to entry. So if you look at AI, how much you can use it, like just like there was a lot of hype in adopting EV, right? Electric vehicles, right? So there is like a lot of barriers to entry, how much you can use it and what should be the limitation where AI can hit. So that also need to be a point of discussion.
Yep.
And Manush, can I have a follow-up question for you? I know you mentioned about AI usage in clinical trials, and we see the huge potentials in it because it did minimize the time the clinical trial coordinators needs to invest into, and then simultaneously they could enroll a lot of patients like all at the same time. What's your insights about AI-powered personalized drug development? Because if we want to get into the root cause of having the right treatment for the right patient at the right time, right dosage, it really boils down to what was mentioned earlier on, which is personalized medicine development. So couple that with clinical trials, I think that's a sure win. Do you have any insights around that, like AI-powered personalized medicine development?
So I would say that stratification of patients, because many a times clinical trials fail because one of the reason is that we are not stratifying the patients properly so that they are selected properly, right? So these AI insights can be used like in a proper manner at the clinical trial sites so that the right patients can be chosen for the trials.
Yeah,
So
and I think it goes back
Karen,
to having. I think ultimately it goes back to the very original comment that we all share, which is having that inclusive data that is non-biased and making sure it's diverse, and then having all the scatter point kind of stay under one pool, so then we can get the AI to extrapolate informations and insights that would be applicable for clinical trials, for drug development. Because right now we still have scattered data, and then I think somebody mentioned about the unstructured data, right? It's not standardized. The data is always clean, so garbage in, garbage out. So in addition to AI literacy movement, I think the second movement is to make sure that everyone somehow come up with a standardization in terms of how data should be documented and how data should be shared, so that we have this pool of quality and usable data that can be feed and taught into the AI. I think that's essential. Sorry, Mantu, I think I interrupt you. You were gonna share something?
That's okay. So Karen, my point was I was engaged with one of the world innovative medtech company, medical technology company. They heavily work on genomics and sequencing. And I think, studying the gene and, sequence and all those, if we could have like bunch of data, like, on the genomics and sequencing and the trial for various kind of a disease, and if we can do an early prediction, and they are working on certain solution, but it's a huge process to build a repository of various variation of genomics and sequencing, so that based on the disease, where we are generating synthetic data based on this variation of pattern of genomics and sequencing, I think that could change the world. But however, miles go, right? It's a lot of data, but if you can see their variation, through the multiple sequencing and artificially synthesizing those variation for a treatment, that could take long, and that will be more accurate way of doing it, instead of looking into the outcome, looking into the disease and diagnosis and all of those. That's my point of view, Karen.
Yeah, and I love you sharing that, because ultimately, if there is enough funding from, I don't know, public plus private sector, so then we can harness this power and then be able to cost save in the long run. Because everyone right now is looking immediately, how am I going to save in costs? You're cutting arms for a leg, so it's not really sustainable. So if AI experts, people who are in it, knowing the potentials, can share the future and projections and outlook of how this very thing can change the world, I think that's the message a lot of governing bodies are missing. They're just looking at, okay, during my election this time, I'm going to save this much money. I don't really care about four years down the road. So ultimately, how do we do that calculated cost saving to convince and inform decision makers who can say, you know what, I'm going to allocate this much funding so that you can go full-blown in doing research and making sure that the ultimate goal will be achieved. Because I think that's what a lot of people are having issue with. They don't have enough funding, not enough resources. They're just looking at the imminent concern. But I know the technology is there. I know that that is doable. So thank you for sharing that, Mintu.
So,
So definitely,
Mantu and
I would like to give one more clarification about like how like that is what I was talking about, the limitation, right? So when we talk about the personalized medicine, so because how much we can invest time and energy on getting there. So I'll go into an instance where there is like we are hitting the walls to take it to the personalized medicine up to a limit. How much you can go, like how much molecular signatures you can use it. So there is limitation. One instance where like one of the Harvard drug discovery team taken like individualized medicine, how to design that and go to an individualized level, not even the population level, going to an individualized medicine. Somebody designed drugs just for me. So they were trying to take it to that level and took it to FDA, and they had like I mean it was like a humongous task for them to convince FDA. It was not possible. So there is limitations. There is limitations, but um, AI can help, but there is limitations to get up to the level.
I think it's good to say that limitation is for the now, right? The limitation will be lifted as more people are aware of the power and potential, because the best is yet to come. We don't know what we don't know. So let's not put a cap to it. You know, I really truly believe that AI could help in many ways. It's just that we're at a very baby stage right now. Not everyone is aware or know. Everyone's just scared of it. They don't want to touch it. So I think we all need to collectively take baby steps, and then we'll be able to get there. I truly believe in that. Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing so many insights. And I can see Shui too, she is raising her hand for quite some time. So I have an interesting point to divert to, that is telemedicine. So I wanted to know your perspective, and then rest of
Yeah,
the people.
Nisha, I have a couple of points with respect to clinical trial, if you can allow me 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So, just building on what Manush and Mantu said and Karen said, uh, and it's important that I should introduce at least myself. Because I've been talking a lot, but I've not really introduced myself formally. So I'm a founder of a generative AI specialist organization called A21.ai. We work in financial services, healthcare, CPG, and data a lot. And in healthcare, we're working for for a large pharma company currently with a market cap of about $75 or $80 billion in building a clinical clinical protocol design tool, where for lung cancer to begin with, where we're going to fine tune the models. And we are doing that actually right now with a lot of previous data, previous research, as well as previous protocols. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. All three would be differently fine-tuned, and this will help doctors collapse the cost of design, at least the protocol design. And that's very critical, because every time you have to redesign a protocol at, let's say, phase 2, it's $150K per person, right? Per patient. If it's phase 3, then it's close to $500,000. So it kind of reduces the cost. Second part around is that as we are moving to that direction, uh, I think a lot of pharma companies are beginning to realize that they can actually create uh, or borrow from manufacturing the whole concept of digital twin, right? And so that they can create the whole digital twin of clinical trials, and how uh, uh, a particular molecule or particular drug will be discovered, will have an effect or adverse reactions or not on particular set of patients, and how it will be perceived in the market, right? So the entire drug discovery, some of the time and cost would going to get collapsed. Now, having said that, of course, nothing goes by FDA without any proper human trials. So, but there are ways and there are multiple workflows that can be collapsed and made much more efficient, and cost savings can happen. And more importantly, it can expedite the whole drug discovery and market time to market. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Raghav, for jumping into it and adding your point. And like I said, that I want to divert the conversation to telemedicine, and I would request Shuhi Tripathi to share her views. And definitely, I would request rest of the members who have not participated yet. Please feel free to add your perspectives on how AI can be used to enhance the telemedicine services. So, Shuhi, you can start off.
Yeah, hi. I actually was going to just respond to the previous question around mental health, behavioral health in the US. So I'll just try and keep it brief. So I've been in healthcare and worked in healthcare for nearly 30 years, and I have a background and a doctorate in healthcare and stats, and work for providers and clinics and hospitals and in behavioral health too. I think a couple of things, because the question was about AI and behavioral health, right? So I think I know that we've taken different strands. We've talked about precision medicine. I joined in late, so my apologies for that, and a lot of other things. But I think in behavioral health, first of all, anyone in the US would know that because of the different streams of funding, it's very siloed between behavioral and physical health, right? And I think the focus on AI has largely been on the physical side, less on the behavioral health side, although you'll find plenty of behavioral health solutions since the pandemic. But the fundamental question and the issue is not around the lack of paucity of data. It's about the accuracy and the quality of the data, both on the behavioral and on the physical health side, which is again not unique to healthcare, but it becomes more pronounced in healthcare. And we found that during the pandemic. We found that, even basic things like staffing capacity, bed capacity, had implications, and people died as a result of that. Not to mention about DME, medical supplies and things like that, like oxygen tanks weren't available. And it wasn't just limited to the US, it was all over the world. So we've all lived that, right? Now, I think if you look at regular behavioral health and what behavioral health does, because it is siloed, separated from physical health, one of the things that in the US that's happening is around value-based care. And value-based care essentially is turning the head and saying you need to look at a member holistically. It is about the patient or the member, right? To date, in the US at least, it's primarily still fee-for-service. It's not fee-for-value. Therefore, the fundamentals of what and how care needs to be provided has really not changed, even though there is a change that's happening. Now you're bringing AI, but you're not necessarily including it and you're using it as an enabler. I heard decision making, I heard physicians can do this, patients can do this. But if you look at the ecosystem, you're primarily making sure that one or the other is driving it. In value-based care, the member ought to be driving it. But the actual decision-making power doesn't necessarily always reside with the member, as we all know. So when you're introducing AI, you're introducing not only a new concept, I think Karen talked about AI literacy, you're actually saying to some extent that AI is so fundamental to what a clinician or an RN or a BSN or whoever is in that profession does, that they must be literate about AI. But I'm going to differ from that. And here's the reason why. I think the fundamentals of AI rest on data. So if your data is not grounded and you don't have a good data foundation, the whole concept of what AI is supposed to do, especially in healthcare, actually is very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, especially when you get to clinical care. Anything that's non-clinical is much less risky and therefore probably much more doable, especially when you're talking about large language models. You can apply, you can have error rates as high as 20% and you can still get away with it. Unless you're hitting finance, then you're indeed do, right? None of us need to be in finance and operations, but we know that. So there are major chunks in healthcare where I would be very cautious about applying AI. However, there are areas where you can easily apply AI. I think Karen or someone else also mentioned, clinics closing because of paperwork, right? Those are the less risky can easily have. So the application of AI in behavioral health then becomes even more risky because one, it's not on everybody's radar screen because we have socially conditioned ourselves to saying behavioral health sits somewhere else, right? Two, someone here, I think Montu or someone mentioned diabetes as an example, right? It is very common to have diabetic patients with depression as comorbid. It's very, very common, right? If we have been unable to move the needle on our clinical outcomes for chronic conditions such as diabetes, having AI and parsing things out and saying, now AI is going to be this new magic wand, I think is a fallacy. So you will need that human interaction. You will need monitoring and auditing actually what an AI does. You will need technologists and those who are in data and AI to actually understand healthcare, which is not easy. You will need to have healthcare professionals to understand technology, which probably would be easier, right? Even though that's not why they went to medical school, right? And the convergence of, if you think of the Venn diagram, and the key people within that Venn diagram are going to be pharma, lab, the member, the clinical, maybe the non-clinical aspects of it, because you're going to have a subset of people who never get to a clinical, to your hospital, they get to ER because of all the other non-clinical factors, right? Transportation, health, shelter, etc., which prevented them from getting care at the right time. So this is where AI can actually help you, because this is where the convergence of taking very complex conditions of people who are on the verge of going to urgent care and emergency care, patch them with AI. That is the junction where AI can be an enabler other than your usual, day-to-day automation that we've been talking about. So you've got to look at that entire healthcare ecosystem and identify where AI can be of use instead of going and parsing. Now we're going to talk about genomics. Now we're going to talk about drug development. That is all great. But when you look at a member as a whole, and when you look at where you have high leakage, high wastage, high fraud, catch the DME suppliers, for example, right? This is where AI can enable you. This is where actually you can not only do cost savings, you can do preventative care, which is much better, which is where, at least in the US, there's a whole movement towards preventative care. This also actually prepares you for value-based care, even though we are never going to be in value-based care in the next 10 years, right? But that's where CMS is headed. So you've also got to take a look at, compliance, blah, 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 all of that, accreditation, what the standards are, and blend this all in, because this is not in isolation. So it's not just thinking about, let's look, we've got to first begin with the foundation. The foundation doesn't begin with AI, the foundation begins with data, and then begin with your AI. And I'm not quite convinced, having been in this field for a little while, although I'm not a clinician, but I've definitely worked with CMOs all across the world, including the US, that we have sound data strategy, we have a sound data foundation, that the quality of the data is good. And in behavioral health, especially, it is quite parsed out within behavioral health as well, right? Other than the clinical diagnosis of DSM-6. So the whole purpose of then putting in and investing in AI begs the question of how invested am I in my data first to clean that up, to then have AI sit on top of it. So those are it wasn't really 2 cents, maybe 3 cents to just add to the conversation, because I'm a little wary of where I want to apply AI and where I don't want to apply AI.
Right.
Thank you.
And then
So-
Washa, if I may add just briefly, and I
Sure.
love hearing different perspectives from different panelists, and thank you, Sue. I think we're collectively agreeing that there are low-hanging fruits that could be tackled, right? The things that will give back time to healthcare professional within the healthcare ecosystem. And we also know that the data is not clean. So there has to be a way to remind all stakeholders within the healthcare ecosystems to provide standardized, clean, and unbiased data. And I think the thing I wanted to reiterate is that I think we all need to dream big, Like there's so much, we have to dream big. We cannot just deal with the imminent needs without looking ahead as to what are possible. Because as soon as the baby steps are taken, people are ready to run. People are ready to race. So I think there are positions and roles among this ecosystems for everyone to keep dreaming big while we're dealing with the low-hanging fruits. Because at the end of the day, we're not talking about chicken and egg. We're talking about simultaneous enrollment, execution of things that could empower people so that more patients could be seen, whether it be the mental health AI chat so that they could have someone to talk to, like a sounding board, right? And someone who can point them to the right direction. A lot of people who've got mental health issues, they don't want to talk to anybody, nor do they know that they've got issue. So if we could have a tool that enable them to start talking and maybe pointing them to the right direction, I think that's a good baby step. And then when it comes to advocacy for AI literacy, it's again letting people know that you can utilize AI to input data that is clean, standardized, and usable for the bigger ecosystem. So there's no conflict whatsoever from one thinking over the other. I think it's how we can encapsulate everything more effectively and strategically so that everyone can win time back. And again, focusing more on the patient benefits. That's essentially like really patients should be centric of all the model and not just the very like small aspect of an operational model, nor should it be like the development side of things. So I think really we got to stamp it back from who is the core reasons for all of this is really the patient. How could we support patient better? So that's my 2 cents.
So thank you so much, Karen, for adding your point of view. And before I allow Sui and Manas to continue the discussion, unfortunately, we are close to the end of the session. And we also have some questions from the audience. So once we hear from Manush and Shui together, then I will just throw as an open forum to some of the questions from the audience we would like to address as well. So Manush, you can start, and Shui, you can add on to it later as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think a key point have come up regarding the value-based care. So the importance of that, because like some of the health systems right now adopting value-based care, that is that is one of the ways where we can address the cost of healthcare in the US. Definitely preventive care, like how we can adopt in a better way so that we can avoid when more patients getting into the urgent care rather than adopting PCP and also like more preventive care early so that we can have like people can take much more like baby steps to make sure that they are not going into ER more often, right? So those things are like coming into the US healthcare system because we are realizing we are going into like we are not taking prudent steps in such a way that we are going into a nice healthcare system compared to other countries. So that is why it is coming, but it is not taken in a positive manner so far. But how AI can come into this, like in each of the sections, like be it clinical care, mental health, all the different aspects, we need to adopt AI wherever possible so that we can address the cost. We should be doing that.
Right.
So,
and Sui, I would like you to add to this as well.
Yeah, I'll just end this conversation fairly quickly. I know you have a host of questions probably waiting. I think I just want to add one thing. There's a difference between concept, which I don't think anyone, including clinicians that I have worked with, deny the fact of the value of AI, right? But if you look at the day-to-day functioning of what a provider has to do, especially in the US, especially if you're in behavioral health, there's a paucity of professionals in healthcare, period, right? Especially in behavioral health, even otherwise, even on the physical side. So while I think conceptually people would agree that AI is a great enabler, what they're going to look for is who's going to, it's great to say, let's give time back to the providers. The reality is they don't have time. In fact, they're allocated time, right? Limits of time. Now let's give you 20 minutes. Now let's give you 15 minutes, right? Then there are no-shows. They're dealing with the reality of what they have to do, dictated largely by insurers, at least in the US. I know the different systems in different parts of the world. So I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. Within this existing system of today, where are strands or avenues where AI can reduce that burden, right? For behavioral health specialists, is it workflow? Is it scheduling? Is it appointments? These are already automated, by the way, by and large, in most health systems universally, right? This is nothing new. So you have to think about where are you going to really invest in AI, because AI is really about large volumes of data, right? And then figure out what is in the risk value framework, what is the least risky for anyone, right? That doesn't put the patient or the member or the provider at risk, right? And then talk about, okay, here are the 3 different areas, whether it's claims, whether it's an SDOH or whatever it is, and then apply that and then standardize that. You've got to apply lean methodology in there, right? And there are systems who've done this. You look at Cleveland Clinic, you look at Mayo. I think Alice had mentioned some studies at Stanford. There are companies that are focused completely only on mental health. They are run by CEOs who happen to be CMOs and happen to have MDs, psychiatry. They understand behavioral health extremely well, both from a clinical and non-clinical side. And I'm going to end it with this. Building AI without the expertise of healthcare professionals is something that should not happen, right? One. The second thing is reducing bias is easier said than done. Bias is so prevalent and so conditioned that people are not aware of what biases exist. So it's actually retraining that whole thing. Forget ethics and responsible and explainable AI. Let's just address the issue of bias, whether it's on the physical side or with the mental health side. There are standards, there are fair practices, et cetera, et cetera. So when we are talking about this, the basic takeaway would be, is my data foundation good? Can I rely on my AI models? Do I have 3 or 4 areas where AI can really help, whether it's on the behavioral or physical health side? Could be dictated by BBC, something else. Can I really help the member and the provider both simultaneously, right? And who's the driver? Who's going to benefit from all of this, right? So again, and how do I reducing bias is a whole another topic that I'm not, again, it's NSF and other institutions have put out some information out there and have actually grants that are out there where people are building their AI models by reducing biases very consciously, and universities are doing that too. So I have hope, but currently I think providers to some extent are literally drowning, and some of them actually have retired because they're done. So anyway, this is a very good topic. Thank you so much for bringing us together.
Thank you so much. And Julia has raised her hand. So since we are running short on time, so I have a question for you from the audience, which I would love if you can answer that. So the audience has asked a very interesting question, that how can we bridge the potential gap in access to AI-powered healthcare for different populations? So what would be your take on that?
Well, I will not be the right person to answer that question because there are people in the panel who are more qualified for this. But one thing what I wanted to say is just basically, concur with what Dr. Tripathi just said, Sue just said, because I completely agree with her. And just add one more thing, which is sort of a thing to think about for those in the audience who are building AI models. One of the things which I would recommend to look into is so-called zero false negative models. That's the models that are absolutely sure. They're sure about only a few things, but they're absolutely sure about those, because these models will have better chance of being accepted by the doctors. Because the models that are just have 60% precision, it's just not good enough, right? It's almost like a throw of a dice. But if there are certain things, and it's very hard, but if possible, to find narrow space where the model can be trained and be, it's never 100%, but very close to 100% sure about its opinion, then those models will be very easily used because, for example, they can be used for triage and other things. It's something where the doctor doesn't have to doubt the model's opinion. So just something to throw in for those who are thinking of building AI models for different spaces. But I agree with Sue. I'm sorry. It's very important to work with the doctors to not just build models in space, but look for actual use cases, and especially if you can find use cases where you can be build very reliable models. That's a key to success.
Thank you so
I
much.
concur, and if I could just add, I concur with both what Sue and Julia mentioned. I think right now people are split into two groups, right? So they need to see evidence to take the next step, and having proof of concept and tangible, measurable outcomes to showcase the values and potentials is key. Because as Sue and others have mentioned, right now our systems across the globe, healthcare ecosystem-wise, is very transaction-based. Is based on number of patients seen, not based on value added. And in the past, I did propose to governing bodies and say, you know, for example, pharmacists, we need to be compensated fairly based on value added. How did we prevent patients from readmitting to the hospital? How did we prevent another adverse reaction? So those are measurable outcomes that improve patients' well-being. So I think on that note, if AI developers can work concertedly with healthcare providers and stakeholders and patient advocacy group, we'll be able to push this further to make the most of this potential. Like measurable evidence is key.
And thank you, Karen. And Resha, the question was about AI. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So the question was, how can we bridge the potential gap in access to AI-powered healthcare for different populations? How can we bridge the gap?
How do we bridge the gap in having access to AI-powered
healthcare for different populations?
AI-powered healthcare.
Well, first of all, do we even have an AI-powered healthcare? That's number one. and then once we bridge that gap, then we can look at how do we bridge the gap for gaining assets. Because right now we don't even have a robust system that's so-called AI power, right? And then once we have that worked out, I mean, my belief is that it's so much easier to enable equitable access for people even in underserved population area. Because right now the crux of the problem isn't about access, because access we already solve it somehow through telemedicine, through remote connections and whatnot. But it's really what is that bread and butter that we're looking for that could help reinvent the way we operationalize healthcare model. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're here to brainstorm and share ideas and opportunities alongside with challenges. Right. But perhaps Sue and Julia would have other thoughts about that. Yeah.
Let me add to what Karen said. I think I love whoever came up with this term of AI-powered healthcare. I think we were all like, really? Wow. So probably it was unintended, but it's very catchy. So thank you for that. I think there are two fundamental things that need to be addressed here. How do you bridge the gap between for access to AI-powered healthcare? Assume certain things which Karen pointed out. But the first question actually is, what do you have access to, right? Access to data, access to provider. So in healthcare, there are 5 key themes. This is not something that I made up necessarily. It's way before I was even born. But access to healthcare is actually a thematic issue within healthcare. It assumes that because you have access to data, people have access to care. That's a fundamental flaw, actually, because not everybody has access to care. Point number 1, I could have a hospital close by, relatively close by, but I may still not have access to care. You asked me the question why. The question is, I'm not thinking about healthcare. I am thinking about transportation, shelter, food to put on the table for my kids. So access to healthcare makes certain assumptions. So let's be very clear about what that means. The second thing is, let's assume that a subset of the population of any country has access to care. The standards of care are different. I know we're not talking about standards to care. So access has subcategories within access. Point number 2. Point number 3, when you're looking at different types of populations, a very broad question. Are you looking at chronic conditions? Let's assume that we're looking at chronic conditions because most people have some kind of chronic condition. Say 50% of any population, any country has a chronic condition. So you're looking at least 50% of the population who has access to care. So now you see where I'm going with this? You have 100 people in a country. You're now only addressing 50 people out of 50. You're keeping those 50 aside, right? And now you're going to have AI. So now you're not addressing the 50, you're probably addressing 5% of that 50%. So you have to put this in context when you're talking about access, define it, look at the data to say who actually has access to care. You can divide it by geography, you can divide it by gender, you could divide it by race, you could divide it by age groups, you could divide it by chronic conditions. And the most beautiful aspect of everything, which is what healthcare does, you always divide it by money. Who has the most risk, right? Because that's the only population that you want to address, right? The most risk, the ones who go to urgent care and emergency care, how do I catch them early so that they don't go there? So now you have sliced and diced that data to address 10% of the population because they are the most, 20% of the population drives, say, 60% of the cost. That's what health systems are interested in. That's where you apply AI. You don't sing a different tune and a different narrative and a different story because your solution helps and benefits all. Systems are not interested in that. Systems are interested in 20% of that population that drives 60% of that cost. That is where AI is going to benefit the most. Now you juxtapose that with behavioral health. Now you have a different story, a completely different narrative, right? So the question is very broad, purposefully so probably, but you have to always go to the root because you're going to make certain assumptions and then you have to defend those assumptions. And if you can't defend those assumptions, no matter how beautiful your AI model is, it falls flat.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, everyone, whoever stick around till the end time. And of course, unfortunately, the session will end in 5 minutes or so. So before you guys leave, and I actually have a lot of bunch of questions to ask to all of you, but definitely we'll connect back again anytime sooner, and I will continue my trail of questions. But before we leave, I just wanted to know from everyone just a one-liner thought on what is your final thought? How was the session, and what is your final takeaway that you would like to pass on to the audience from each one of you? So I'll start in the order which is showing to me. So I will start with David Shipley, if he has stuck around since the beginning of the meeting. So just wanted to know one-liner final thought on this session.
I had to step away, so I'm afraid I'm coming back in cold, so I'm gonna have to pass.
All right. So anybody else would like to share their final thoughts? Anybody can jump in.
Yeah, if I could share the final thought, I congratulate you and your company for initiating this thought-provoking panel discussions. It's always good to come together with like-minded leaders and organizations to speak about opportunity as well as blind spots, because a lot of time we could focus on just what's going to be working well, but we might have overlooked potential blind spots. So it is a great exercise for all of us from different industry, different expertise to come together and kind of brainstorm and share insights and share challenges. I think this is how our world should be functioning. So then we can come up with solutions that we collectively created. Like co-creation is what I love, because that is inclusive and ensuring that all the diverse opinions are incorporated. So I commend you for getting 27 panelists on board. I was thinking logistically, okay, how on earth is the host going to be managing, making sure everyone has sufficient airtime? But you've done it really well. And I think we've got a great group of experts to really chime in whenever the right time comes. So yeah, kudos to you and your team.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words. And I would request rest of the members also just a final thought before literally Zoom cuts us off from the session. So just final thoughts, and so that we have a conclusive outcome for the audience that yes, this is what our journey would be with AI. And there are so many qualified people have given their point of view on things. Of course, I always believe in one point that not everything is black and white. Things are gray. And the space of AI in healthcare, it's definitely great. That's what I could conclude from the conversation. There are so many perspectives. And one thing which I would appreciate those who left also, that there was so much of active participation. Usually, it's a one-way traffic. But I think today I felt I'm also part of this discussion. Every point, everything was really catched up upon. People really raised their hand and waited also. I think I would commend Sui for waiting for so long to answer her point of view as well. And thank you, Brett Weston, for sticking to us till the end. Thank you, Julia, as well. So just final thoughts anybody could add, and then definitely we'll close the session.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in real quick. I think with a lot of the AI conversations around use cases, it's been, and with a lot of the pressures facing both payers and providers, it's been very easy to flock towards cost savings use cases to around efficiency, reducing costs. This conversation was great. If we remember that the goal of healthcare is to ultimately improve the patient, right? Their health, the care that we provide. As long as the AI models, as long as the use cases stay focused on that, the other efficiency and things that would drive up cost, readmissions and things like that will follow. So this was a great dialogue.
Thank you so much. And any last words from Julia and Sui, please feel free.
Well, a couple of things. One of them is let's always think about patients' privacy. And also always when we're building AI models, keep in mind that need to be generalizable and extend to all different kinds of populations. So make sure that when you're training your AI models, you're using a lot of data to avoid biases and as much as possible create generalizability. Thank you. And thank you for the panel.
Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say that try and bring people who are not in data and AI into the fold of data and AI. Try and get your SMEs, those who are in healthcare, those who are not in healthcare, because healthcare touches each and every one of us.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what our titles are and where we live.
Yes.
It impacts us. So it actually impacts our future, our current and future. So the way I look at it is you don't need to be in healthcare. You don't need to have any credentials to be in healthcare. You don't need to have any credentials for being in data and AI because, you're part of this journey. So may as well come along with us in this journey and just tell them that they're good, they're smart, and they're good looking. And the moment you say the latter, especially when you say people are good looking, people go, all right, I'm joining you. So, bring some levity to this conversation and make sure that, people are interested. Those who are curious will actually get some formal training. We have a paucity of people in data, in AI. We need them. We have a paucity of people in healthcare. We have paucity of trained professionals. We need, young, old, whatever you want to call them. So I just say bring everybody along on this journey and make this journey something where we can truly learn from each other. We truly need it and we can truly learn. Make it happen.
Thank you so much. So we are almost towards the end. I would like to once again thank you everyone for participating in this panel, and we are really grateful that we could connect with you, got to know insights from you. And like I said, I will connect with you anyway to ask more queries, which I have. So thank you so much and have a very good day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.